Welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. This week, the SmoothBrain crew decided to bust out some of their most powerful brews, not cedh, for a Hecate Wee Ball episode. So let's see what these decks are capable of. Up first is Jason, on the partner pairing of Dargo the Shipwrecker and Silas Renn, Seeker Adept. His goal with this deck is to use many sacrifice synergies to assemble a board position in which he can combo off with spells like Grape Shot. His opening hand has a Swamp, a Badlands, a Wooded Foothills, a Lotus Petal, a Mox Diamond, a Sacrifice, and a Flamekin Herald. Up next is me, Cameron, playing Omnath, Locus of Creation. This is a blink deck, using many creatures with powerful enter the battlefield triggers, to hopefully draw cards to combo off with, or beat down my opponents. I start the game with a Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, Otawara, Soaring City, a Steam Vince, a Scalding Tarn, a Noble Hierarch, and a Coiling Oracle, bottoming a Temple Garden. Our third player today is Ethan, who brought Maelstrom Wanderer, and this deck speaks for itself. Ethan wants to cast Maelstrom Wanderer as early as possible and as many times as possible in order to cast his deck and win. His starting hand is a Forest, an Exotic Orchard, a Bloodstained Mire, a City of Traders, a Sol Ring, a Factor Fiction, and a Consecrated Sphinx. Up last today is Matt on Cormela, Glamour Thief. This is a spell-based combo deck and wants to abuse Cormela's activated ability and death triggers with the card Saw in Half. He keeps a hand with an Island, a Badlands, a Gemstone Caverns, a Talisman of Creativity, a Phyrexian Altar, a Frantic Search, and a Spell Seeker. We're about to hop right into the game, but before that, go ahead and like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for our channel so that you don't miss any of our new content. We post new gameplay videos every week, and you don't want to miss any of those. Big shout out to our patrons. We really appreciate the support, and if you want to help us out too, link to our Patreon is in the description, as well as links to our deck lists, our social media, our podcast channel, and our public Discord server. Our channel is also partnered with Dragon Shield, so if you're looking to pick up any new sleeves or Magic-related products, check out our affiliate link in the description. We're also partnered with Inked Gaming, so if you want to make any custom playmats, use our affiliate link also in the description. Now, on to the gameplay.
Looks like Jason wins the die roll, but Matt has his pre-game of Gemstone Caverns, and he'll exile Frantic Search. Then Jason will play his Badlands, and then he casts Mox Diamond for free, and the card he discards is a Swamp. Then he'll cast his Lotus Petal, and then with his 3 available mana, he'll cast his Flamekin Herald. The turn is passed, and Cameron plays Yavimaya and a Noble Hierarch, and then passes. Ethan plays his Exotic Orchard, taps it for 1 for a Sol Ring, and then he'll tap his Sol Ring for the Arcane Signet he top-decked, and then he passes to Matt. Matt will just play his Badlands, and then cast Talisman of Creativity, then pass the turn to Jason, who starts off with a Command Tower, then he'll tap for 3 and cast Silas Renn. Cascade trigger, he finds a Wishclaw Talisman. Everything will resolve, and then Jason will move to combat, hit Matt for 3, and then pass to Cameron. And Cameron starts off by shocking into Steam Vents, then tapping for 3 and casting Rhystic Study. And just so the game goes by a little easier for all of us, I'm only going to be announcing when Rhystic Study is paid for, or a trigger is missed. So then he passes the turn to Ethan, who starts off with City of Traders, and then he'll tap for 6 mana and drop a turn 2 Consecrated Sphinx. So then he'll pass the turn to Matt, and when Matt draws 1, Ethan draws 2. Yeah, I think this is going to be another one I'm not going to be announcing every trigger for. Matt will then play a Mountain, then he taps for 3 and casts Spellseeker. Cameron declines his Rhystic Study draw, and the card he tutors is Twin Flame. And then the turn is passed to Jason, and he'll start off by playing and fetching with a Wooded Foothills, and the land he finds is a Volcanic Island. He'll then activate Wishclaw Talisman, and he gives it to Cameron because Cameron said he'd give it back. Jason will then move to combat and swing for 2 Commander at Ethan, and then 3 at Matt, and they both just take it. The turn is then passed to Cameron, and he immediately activates Wishclaw Talisman and gives it back to Jason as promised. After tutoring a card to his hand, he'll immediately cast the card he tutored for, which is Swords to Plowshares, and it's pointed at Consecrated Sphinx. Then he'll play a Darkar Wastes as land for turn, and then thanks to Yavimaya, he can tap it for a green, and he'll drop Coiling Oracle. He'll reveal Restoration Angel off of its ETB, so it goes to his hand. Then the turn is passed to Ethan, who will start off by tapping a City of Traders for 2, and then playing City of Brass. This makes him sacrifice his City of Traders. He'll then cast a Mox Diamond, and then Jason decides he wants to respond to the Rhystic Study trigger by flashing in Orcish Bowmasters, paying the 1. Its ETB trigger will ping Noble Hierarch, and he'll amass 1. Ethan doesn't pay the 1, so Cameron draws, and then Bowmasters pings Spellseeker. Oh god, scratch what I said earlier. Because of Bowmasters, I'm gonna have to announce every Rhystic Study trigger now. Thanks guys. The Mox Diamond will then resolve, and Ethan discards Bloodstained Mire. Then, with 2 mana already floating, Ethan will tap for an additional 6, forgetting about City of Brass's damage, and he'll cast Maelstrom Wanderer, not paying the 1. Bowman kills the Oracle. There's 2 Cascade triggers, and Ethan hits Seagate Restoration for his first one. He can't pay the 1, so when Cameron draws, Ethan gets pinged by Bowman. Matt then decides to cast Offer You Can't Refuse on Ethan's Seagate Restoration. He doesn't pay the 1, so Ethan gets pinged by Bowman again. It's countered, so Ethan resolves his second Cascade, which is Flood of Tears. He doesn't pay the 1, so Bowman pings Cameron this time, and then Ethan will respond by sacrificing his 2 treasures for a blue and a green. Flood of Tears will then resolve, and then Maelstrom Wanderer resolves, and Ethan still has 2 floating. He'll then cast Mox Diamond again, discarding an Arid Mesa. Then he'll cast a Soul Ring, which he'll use to cast Arcane Signet again. Then he'll cast Somberwald Sage. After this he moves to combat and hits Jason for 7 commander. The turn is then passed to Matt, and he starts off with an island. The table then bullies Ethan, reminding him he didn't take his City of Brass damage. Matt will then tap for 3 and cast Phyrexian Altar. The turn is then passed to Jason, and he starts off with Expressive Iteration. He'll look at the top 3 of his library, put 1 to his hand, 1 to the bottom of his library, and 1 in exile that he can play this turn. And Dark Ritual is the card he puts in exile. And he'll cast the Dark Ritual and use it to cast Bowman again. When Bowman ETBs, he pings Ethan's Somberwald Sage. With the 1 black still floating, Jason will then exile Simeon's Spirit Guide for a red and cast his Wishclaw Talisman again. The turn is then passed to Cameron, and he starts off with a Lotus Cobra. He then plays Scalding Tarn, and his Lotus Cobra makes him a red mana. He'll then fetch for an untapped Hollowed Fountain, getting himself a white off of Lotus Cobra, and then he'll tap for an additional 2, green off of his wastes, and he'll cast Omnath. He draws a card upon ETB, and Bowman kills the Lotus Cobra. Cameron will then discard 3 lands, Restoration Angel, and Rhystic Study. And seeing as how that was his cleanup, he then passes the turn to Ethan, who starts off with a Forest, then he'll tap for 6 and cast Genesis Storm. And he gets a copy of it since he's casted his Maelstrom Wanderer once. And they'll both resolve, so the first one hits Emoti, then the second one will hit Eternal Witness, which when it ETBs, he'll get Flood of Tears back to his hand. Ethan will then move to combat, and he swings Maelstrom Wanderer at Matt, and then his other creatures at Jason. Jason will block Emoti with his 1/1 army, and take 2, and Matt takes 7 commander. Ethan will then pass the turn, and Matt casts Mystical Tutor on end step. He finds Demonic Tutor to the top of his library, and then moves to his turn and draws it. And then immediately after drawing it, he'll cast it. As Matt's searching, he says he's going to find the perfect counter to Jason's Bowmaster. And as you guys know, the perfect way to kill a Bowman is a Bowman.
Thank you. Thank you. Titan has freed us.
Oh, I wouldn't say free. More like under new management.
The turn is then passed to Jason.
I want to do a fun thing on my turn, but I can't do it because Bowman.
Now you know how we feel!
So Jason will start off by casting a Mana Vault, then he'll tap it for 3 mana, and using 1 of it, he'll activate Wishclaw Talisman. And Ethan and Cameron both have a little begging match over it. They both say they'll give it back to him, but Jason ultimately goes with Cameron. He tutors for a tutor, and that tutor is Entomb, which he'll cast. And it finds Hoarding Broodlord to his graveyard, and then he'll reanimate it. When it ETBs, he'll tutor a card to exile, and seeing as Jason still has 2 floating colorless mana, he'll then tap his Broodlord to convoke out Saw in Half, targeting the Broodlord. So he'll get 2 token copies of it, both at half power and toughness, and then he gets to tutor 2 more cards to exile. And one of the cards he tutors is Burnt Offering, which he will convoke out, sacrificing his token that he tapped to cast it. And token copies do keep mana value, so he'll make 4 black and 4 red mana. Then he casts the other card he tutored for, which is Animate Dead, and he will convoke it as well. And when it ETBs, it attaches itself to Bowman, which kills Matt's Bowman when it ETBs. But Matt responds by sacrificing it to his altar so that the ability fizzles and Jason doesn't get his army. Jason will then cast Sacrifice on his other dragon token, making 8 more black mana. Then he drops Flamekin Herald, and since he sacrificed 2 permanents this turn, out comes Dargo, and it has a Cascade trigger. We see Baleful Strix, which draws him a card on ETB. And it draws him Obnixilis Captive Kingpin, which he'll cast. Unfortunately though, Jason has run out of gas, so the turn is passed to Cameron, who starts off with a Marsh Flats, and it gains him 4 life. Then he'll fetch for an untapped Sacred Foundry, and get 4 mana. And when he fetches, Obnixilis will also trigger, and it exiles Jason and Otawara. Cameron will then cast Birthing Pod, and with his last floating mana, he'll activate it, sacrificing Omnath, finding Terror of the Peaks to the battlefield. He'll then cast Displacer Kitten, and when it ETBs, Terror of the Peaks will do 2 damage to Orcish Bowmasters. And then the turn is passed to Ethan, who will immediately Flood of Tears again, and this time he has 4 permanents returned to his hand, so he'll put a Gilded Lotus on the battlefield for free. He'll then play Soul Ring, a Windswept Teeth, which he'll immediately fetch with for an untapped Breeding Pool. Then he taps out to cast Walk the Aeon, then he does not pay the buyback, and then he'll move to his next turn. and he'll start off by casting Arcane Signet. Then he'll tap out for 8 and cast Maelstrom Wanderer. Double Cascade. First one hits Kodama's Reach, which finds him a mountain to the battlefield and a forest to hand, and his second hit will be Release to the Wind, which unfortunately can't hit Maelstrom Wanderer like he'd want it to because Maelstrom Wanderer's still on the stack, so he'll hit Gilded Lotus. Then when Maelstrom Wanderer resolves, he'll then cast the Gilded Lotus for free. He then plays a forest as land for turn, then moves to combat and hits Jason for 7 commander. Ethan will then pass the turn to Matt, who starts off with an Arid Mesa. He'll immediately fetch with it for an untapped Blood Crypt. Wait, never mind, he wants to keep his 2 life, so he swaps it out for a mountain. He'll then cast his commander, Cormela. He'll then activate her to get Grixis mana and cast Twin Flame on her. So he gets a copy of Cormela and the original Die to Legend rule, and then he gets to return Mystical Tutor back to his hand. He still has 1 blue floating left from Cormela's activation, so he'll cast Mystical Tutor, binding Goryo's Vengeance to the top of his library. Matt will then move to combat and hit Ethan for 2 not commander. The turn is then passed to Jason, who starts off by playing the Ottawara as land for turn. Jason will then recast Mana Vault, then cast Wishclaw Talisman again, then activate the Talisman again, giving it to Cameron again. He'll then drop Dockside Extortionist, which gets him 4 treasure tokens, and he'll use 3 of them to cast Flamekin Herald again, and then he'll recast Dargo, and he has a Cascade trigger. It's a Soul Ring. After this, he'll recast Baleful Strix to draw a card. Then he passes to Cameron, who will immediately activate Wishclaw Talisman again. And to mirror Jason, Dockside hits the battlefield. But Cameron's a little better off because he gets 8 treasure tokens. And then he decides to Cloud Shift his Dockside. Oh boy, that's 8 more treasures. We then see Displacer Kitten hit the battlefield. Then Birthing Pod comes back, and Dockside is flickered. Pod is then activated, sacrificing Dockside, and it finds Spellseeker, which finds Swansong. Cameron will then cast Displace, blinking Spellseeker and Displacer Kitten. This will also trigger Displacer Kitten, blinking Birthing Pod. And then when Spellseeker comes back, Cameron finds an Offer You Can't Refuse to hand. Pod is activated again, sacrificing Spellseeker, finding Felidar Guardian, which flickers Birthing Pod. Pod is activated again, sacrificing Guardian. And this finds Karmic Guide, which returns Felidar Guardian, which blinks the Birthing Pod again. Guardian is sacrificed again, which finds Kiki Jiki to the battlefield. Kiki Jiki makes a copy of Karmic Guide, which will bring back the Felidar Guardian, which blinks Kiki Jiki, which makes Kiki Jiki and Felidar Guardian go infinite. So since Cameron can make as many Felidar Guardians with haste as he wants, he's going to make 100 million of them and swing out at his opponents, making Cameron the winner. Well everyone, there you have it. That was a high power and very exciting game. I honestly had no idea Cameron had the Birthing Pod line in his deck, but I'm happy to see him able to pull it off. There were a surprising amount of tutors in this game, and it's mostly because of Jason's Wishclaw Talisman. Anyways, let us know what you guys thought down in the comments below. If you want to see some more high power gameplay like this, let us know. While you're down there, don't forget to check out all of our links. You can join our Patreon if you're interested, and also don't forget to check out our podcast. They just dropped a fire episode this week. But that's all I've got today, guys. Hope you all have a smooth day.